Guilty. That one word sent her to prison. Not because she was violent, not because there was proof, but because the man she married chose another woman. He testified. She was chained, and the victim was crying for the cameras. Then, behind prison walls, one detail didn't add up. A medical record that shouldn't exist. A timeline that made no sense. And that's when she realized this wasn't a mistake. It was a setup. So if the truth was buried on purpose, who was really afraid of it coming out? Welcome my beautiful family and friends to my YouTube channel. Please click on subscribe, like, share, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Now back to the story. The courtroom was too quiet. Not the respectful kind of silence. The dangerous kind. The kind that presses against your ears until your own heartbeat sounds like a crime. She stood perfectly still, hands clasped in front of her, nails digging into skin she no longer felt. The air smelled faintly of wood polish and cold metal. Somewhere behind her, a camera shutter clicked. Somewhere to her left, someone sniffed back tears. Somewhere very far away, a clock ticked. Tick, tick, tick. The judge adjusted his glasses. And in that small, ordinary movement, her entire life tilted. Will the defendant please rise? She was already standing. Her legs trembled, but not enough to collapse. She had promised herself she would not collapse. Not here. Not in front of him. Not in front of them. She lifted her eyes, and that's when she saw him. Her husband sat in the front row, shoulders slumped, hands folded together like he was praying. His suit was perfectly tailored, dark, expensive, pressed to precision. The same man who once complained about wrinkles in his shirts now wore grief like a costume. His head was bowed, his jaw tight, his expression broken. If someone didn't know him, they might believe it. They might believe he was a grieving father. They might believe he was the victim. Beside him sat the woman who had replaced her, the mistress. Her belly was round now, stretched beneath a soft pastel dress. One hand rested protectively over it. The other clutched a tissue, already damp. Her mascara had been carefully smudged, not ruined, just enough to suggest pain without losing beauty. She was crying. Soft, controlled sobs. The kind that sound convincing. The kind that cameras love. The judge cleared his throat. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Having reviewed the testimony, the evidence presented, and the statements provided by all parties. All parties. Her breath caught. All parties included the man who used to kiss her forehead every morning. The man who used to call her his safe place. The man who once promised, "I will never let anything happen to you." That man had taken a stand. That man had looked at her, and said. She became unstable. She was angry all the time. I was afraid of her. Afraid. The word had burned then. It burned now. Her fingers curled tighter. The judge continued. The court finds the defendant. The room seemed to tilt. Her vision blurred at the edges. Somewhere behind her, her sister inhaled sharply. Somewhere else, a stranger whispered, "Oh God." The word came next. Guilty. It didn't echo. It didn't explode. It didn't arrive with drama. It landed quietly, softly, like a blade sliding between ribs. For half a second, she thought she hadn't heard correctly. For half a second, the world froze in a strange, weightless pause where anything was still possible. Then her sister made a sound, a broken sound, and reality crashed back in. Guilty. The word pressed down on her chest until breathing felt optional. Her knees threatened to give out, but she locked them. She would not fall. She would not beg. She would not give them the satisfaction. She turned her head, just slightly. Her eyes found him. Her husband. Her billionaire husband. The man who had built an empire from nothing. The man admired for his discipline, his intelligence, his control. The man the newspapers loved to call visionary. He was crying now. Real tears this time. They slid down his face unchecked. His shoulders shook. His hands trembled as he covered his mouth like he couldn't contain the sound, trying to escape. For one brief, horrible moment their eyes met, and in his she saw it. Not love, not remorse. Guilt. Heavy, crushing, terrified guilt. Not because she was innocent, but because he had chosen wrong, and he knew it. That was when it hit her. Not the verdict, not the chains, Not the prison, the realization. He had testified against her, not under pressure, not by force, not because he didn't know her, but because sacrificing her was easier than facing the truth. He hadn't protected the pregnant mistress because he loved her. He had protected her because admitting the lie would mean admitting he destroyed his own wife. And that was a weight he refused to carry. The judge's voice continued, but sounded distant now. Mechanical, meaningless. Sentenced to 2 years incarceration. 2 years. 730 days. 730 mornings waking up behind bars. 730 nights wondering how betrayal could feel worse than loss. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She didn't move. The guards approached. Their hands were gentle, almost apologetic, as they guided her wrists forward. Cold metal closed around her skin. The sound of cuffs clicking shut echoed through the room. That sound did something to her. It made it real. Her sister reached for her, fingers brushing her sleeve, nails digging in desperation. Her father shouted something. Her name, maybe or his. The judge called for order. The bailiff barked instructions. None of it mattered. Her eyes were locked on one thing. The woman. The mistress. Still crying. Still clutching her belly. Still playing the part. When their eyes met, the crying stopped. Just for a second. In that second, the woman smiled. Not wide. Not obvious. Just enough. The guards turned her gently toward the side door. Chains were fastened around her ankles. The weight pulled at her steps. Every sound was louder now. Chains. Footsteps. Murmurs. A camera shutter, snapping her lowest moment forever. As she passed him, he whispered, "I'm sorry." She didn't look at him. Didn't answer. Didn't slow down. Sorry didn't undo testimony. Sorry didn't erase lies. Sorry didn't stop the doors from opening. The heavy courtroom doors swung wide. Cold air rushed in. The hallway smelled like bleach and finality. As they led her away, she heard it. Her husband's voice breaking behind her. "Please, please." She kept walking. Because in that moment, right there between the verdict and the cage, she understood something that would change her forever. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a choice. He didn't just betray her. He sacrificed her. If you believe no one should be framed to protect the powerful, hit subscribe. People who defend injustice usually scroll past. The first night in prison taught her a truth no one ever talks about. Silence doesn't exist there. Even in the dark. Even at midnight. Even when everyone is supposed to be asleep. There's always sound. Metal doors slamming somewhere far down the corridor. Footsteps echoing without rhythm. Someone crying softly into a pillow they don't deserve. Someone laughing too loudly because fear needs a disguise. And underneath it all, breathing. Too many people breathing in one place. She lay on the thin mattress, staring at the ceiling, eyes burning but refusing to close. The lights never fully turned off. They dimmed, just enough to remind you that darkness was a privilege you no longer had. Her body was exhausted. Her mind was not. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the courtroom. The word, guilty. She felt it again. The weight of the cuffs, the drag of chains around her ankles, the way the air left her lungs when the doors closed behind her. Her heart began to race. Too fast. Too hard. Her chest tightened like invisible hands were squeezing it shut. She sat up suddenly, gasping. Air refused to cooperate. She clawed at her shirt, fingers shaking, vision tunneling as panic surged through her veins like poison. She was dying. That was the thought. Not metaphorically, not emotionally, physically. Her cellmate stirred on the top bunk. "Hey," a calm voice said. "Hey, you're not dying." She shook her head violently. "I can't breathe. Look at me." She couldn't. "Look at me," the voice insisted, firmer now. "Count with me. For in, for hold, for out." Hands appeared in her line of vision, steady, unafraid. She tried. Failed. Tried again. Air burned back into her lungs in shallow, painful bursts. Her heartbeat slowed, slightly. "There you go," the woman said. Panic attack. Not death. She slid down the wall, trembling, soaked in sweat. The woman climbed down from the top bunk and sat across from her. "I'm Rosa," she said. "Former nurse. Former everything, really. Former freedom." She didn't say, but it hung in the air anyway. That was her first night. By the third, she stopped expecting sleep. By the fifth, she stopped crying. By the seventh, she stopped asking why. Prison didn't care about innocence. It cared about compliance. The strip searches were the worst. Stand still. Arms out. Open your mouth. Lift your breasts. Spread your legs. Cough. Every time, something inside her shrank. She learned to leave her body during them, to float just above it, to become a witness instead of a participant. Survival was dissociation. Days blurred together. Food that tasted like nothing. Showers timed and watched. Conversations whispered because walls listened. And every 2 weeks, like clockwork, he tried to see her. Her husband. Flowers. Letters. Tears. She refused every visit. Don't you want closure? A guard asked once, not unkindly. There's no closure for betrayal, she replied. The truth was harsher. If she saw him, she might break. And she couldn't afford to break. Because breaking didn't change facts. Breaking didn't rewrite testimony. Breaking didn't erase lies spoken under oath. Rosa watched her carefully over those weeks. You could tell a lot about someone by how they survived prison. Some got loud. Some got mean. Some disappeared into themselves like ghosts. She didn't disappear. She hardened. You don't belong here, Rosa said one night as they sat on their bunks, lights dimmed. Neither do a lot of people, she replied. Rosa studied her. Your case, it doesn't sit right. Nothing about it did. Rosa asked questions, not the emotional ones people usually ask, but practical ones. What hospital treated her? I don't know. What doctor? They didn't say. Any medical staff testify? No. Rosa frowned. That's strange. Ow. In cases involving pregnancy loss due to assault, hospitals are mandatory reporters. If a woman comes in saying she was pushed and miscarried, police are notified immediately. It doesn't wait for the next day. Her stomach tightened. The report came from her, she said slowly. The mistress. She went to the police herself. Rosa shook her head. That's not protocol. A small crack appeared. Barely visible. Barely audible. But once you saw it, you couldn't unsee it. They talked more after that. Late nights. Quiet voices. Careful words. Rosa explained medical timelines. How trauma-induced miscarriage left evidence. How records were meticulous. How stories had to match biology. And did her timeline match? Rosa asked. She thought back. The testimony had been emotional. Graphic. Convincing. But vague. Not really, she admitted. Rosa leaned back. That's because lies rely on feeling. Truth relies on detail. Days passed. Weeks. Then one morning, a woman named Kesha sat down at their table in the cafeteria. You Rosa? She asked. Rosa nodded. My sister works at a women's clinic. Rosa went still. She remembers your mistress, Kesha continued, eyes darting. Says the file's flagged. Her breath stopped. Flag how? Rosa asked. She came in before the miscarriage, Kesha said quietly. Asking questions. About pills. About timelines. About how things would look. The room seemed to tilt. She came back later, Kesha added. After. Story didn't match. Changed details. Doctor made notes. Rosa closed her eyes. Slowly. Carefully. Because if she didn't, rage would burst out her chest. An image formed. The crying woman. The round belly. The trembling hands in court. A performance. If the baby wasn't taken from her, Rosa whispered later that night. Then why frame you? The answer crept in, ugly and cold. Because guilt binds people. Because lies are leverage. Because a man afraid of losing everything will burn his wife to save himself. She lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling again. But this time, panic didn't come. Something else did. Clarity. If the story was false. If the evidence was staged. If the lie was deliberate. Then her cage wasn't an accident. It was constructed, brick by brick, by people who walk free. And that meant something terrifying and powerful. If the baby wasn't taken from her, then why was an innocent woman in a cage? Comment, I stand for truth, if you already feel something doesn't add up. Truth doesn't arrive loudly. It doesn't kick down doors or announce itself with sirens. Truth leaks. It seeps through cracks, through whispers, through files marked flag in quiet systems no one expects to matter. And once it starts leaking, nothing can stop the flood. It began with paperwork. Boring. Colorless. Easy to ignore. Medical records rarely scream. They don't cry on witness stands or clutch swollen bellies. They sit silently in folders, waiting for someone brave or desperate enough to look closely. Rosa knew where to look. She had spent years in hospitals before prison. Years learning that the most dangerous lies weren't spoken. They were documented badly. Dates that didn't line up. Signatures placed too neatly. Notes that sounded rehearsed instead of clinical. She started asking questions the way nurses do, casually, patiently, without accusation. And answers started coming back wrong. The clinic visit before the miscarriage. The consultation. The questions about pills. About timelines. About how long something would be detectable. Those words echoed in her mind like a confession waiting to happen. The mistress hadn't been a victim scrambling for help. She'd been planning. And plans leave trails. Outside the prison walls, those trails were beginning to glow. The mistress felt it before she knew why. Panic has a smell. Sharp. Metallic. Like fear mixed with perfume. She started snapping at people. Losing control. Yelling at receptionists, lawyers, strangers who made the mistake of looking at her too long. Her sleep vanished. Her appetite followed. She checked her phone obsessively, fingers shaking every time it buzzed. Because someone was asking questions. Because old clinic files were being reviewed. Because names were being whispered in places she couldn't access anymore. Because lies don't like attention. And then the truth reached him. The billionaire husband. The man who had stood tall in court. The man who had sworn under oath. The man who had destroyed his wife with a steady voice and borrowed fear. He didn't hear it from police. He didn't hear it from lawyers. He heard it in his own living room. Late at night, the mistress was screaming. Not crying. Not sobbing. Screaming. Words tumbled out unfiltered, sharpened by terror and exhaustion. I didn't mean for it to go this far. He froze. What are you talking about? The words that followed hit him harder than any verdict. The baby wasn't his. She didn't know whose it was. She had panicked. She had ended it. She had blamed his wife. Because guilt would bind him. Because fear would keep him loyal. Because a lie told once is dangerous, but a lie believed is powerful. The room spun. His knees buckled. He sat down hard, staring at the woman he thought he knew, the woman he had protected, the woman he had chosen over his wife, the woman who had lied, the woman who had used him, the woman who had turned him into a weapon. His wife hadn't pushed anyone, hadn't screamed, hadn't harmed anyone. She had been innocent, and he had still chosen the lie. Something inside him collapsed. Not gently, violently. He vomited, shook, cried until his throat burned. Because now there was no confusion to hide behind. No doubt, no gray area. He had sent his wife to prison. He had testified against the woman who loved him. He had destroyed her life. For nothing. He tried to confess immediately. Called lawyers. Called old contacts. Called anyone who would listen. But truth doesn't move fast when guilt is involved. And prison walls don't open because someone feels sorry. So he did the only thing he could think of. He wanted to see her. Again, and again, and again. Each time, she refused. The guards started recognizing him. The man with the expensive suit and hollow eyes. The man who waited for hours holding letters he'd never deliver. The man who cried quietly in corners, begging for a chance to speak. She doesn't want to see you, the guard told him. Please, he whispered. Tell her I know. Tell her I know she's innocent. The guard hesitated. She said to tell you, she's already dead. That message broke something in him. He stopped sleeping, stopped eating, stopped pretending. But inside the prison, she didn't feel victory. She felt hollow, because knowing the truth didn't erase the cage, didn't give her back time, didn't rewind betrayal. And then the call came. Not from lawyers, not from Rosa, from her sister. The voice on the other end was shaking. Mom collapsed. The words blurred. Cancer. Aggressive. Advanced. There was no time. She filed for emergency release. Compassionate leave. Anything. Denied. The reason was typed neatly on paper. Conviction for violent crime. She sat on her bunk holding the notice, staring at it until the letters stopped meaning anything. Violent. She had never thrown a punch in her life. never raised her hand in anger. And yet here it was, the lie still working. Her mother grew weaker. She missed hospital visits, missed treatments, missed nights sitting beside her bed holding her hand. She listened to updates through a phone pressed too tightly against her ear. She keeps asking for you. She thinks you're coming. She keeps saying your name. Then one morning, before dawn, the guard came. Not loudly, not urgently, softly, as if volume could soften impact. You have a call. She knew before she picked it up. Her sister's voice shattered. She's gone. The world didn't stop. The prison didn't pause. Breakfast was still served. Counts were still done. Doors still opened and closed on schedule. But something in her broke permanently. She sat there, unmoving, staring at nothing. Her mother had died, believing her daughter was a criminal, believing a lie. Because of him. That night, she didn't cry, didn't scream, didn't move. She stared into the dark and let the truth settle fully. He hadn't just stolen her freedom. He had stolen her goodbye. And outside those walls, the truth was finally closing in. Appeals were moving, files reopening, eyes watching. Freedom was coming, slowly, inevitably. But forgiveness? That door was sealed forever. Freedom was coming, but forgiveness never was. If you believe betrayal has consequences, comment, "No forgiveness for liars." Freedom did not arrive with celebration. There were no cheers, no music, no swelling sense of triumph. It arrived quietly, on paper. A guard stood at her cell, one morning holding a folder, his expression unreadable. He didn't smile. He didn't congratulate her. He simply said the words that felt unreal even as they landed. Your conviction has been overturned. She stared at him. The sentence floated in the air, fragile, as if speaking it too loudly might cause it to disappear. Overturned, not reduced, not reconsidered, erased. The lie had finally collapsed under the weight of truth. The medical records, the clinic visits, the flag files, the confession that came too late. All of it had surfaced, slowly, methodically, undeniably. She signed her release papers with a hand that didn't shake, because prison had already taken everything trembling from her. When the gates opened, the sound was softer than she expected. A dull mechanical hum, metal sliding against metal. No drama. She stepped outside wearing clothes that felt unfamiliar against her skin. The sky looked too wide. The air smelled like rain and gasoline and possibility. She paused, not because she was afraid, but because she understood something important. The woman who entered prison did not walk out. That version of her had died somewhere between strip searches and sleepless nights, between lies and loss. The woman who stepped forward now was different. Sharper, quieter, unbreakable. Behind her, the prison gates closed. Ahead of her, the world waited. And inside that world, consequences were finally arriving. The mistress was arrested within days. No dramatic chase. No screaming headlines at first. Just handcuffs. Cold. Ironic. Final. Fraud. Perjury. False reporting. The same system she had manipulated now pressed down on her shoulders. The cameras came later. Photos of her crying. Real this time. Headlines rewriting history. Public sympathy evaporating. People don't forgive liars easily when the truth is simple. And the truth was devastating. The billionaire husband didn't hide. He couldn't. His name was everywhere. Once celebrated, now dissected. Business partners distanced themselves. Boards asked questions. Investors whispered. His face became synonymous with betrayal. He hadn't lost his fortune. Money is stubborn like that. But he had lost something far more dangerous to a man like him. Respect, credibility, control. Every interview he declined felt like an admission. Every statement released by his lawyers sounded hollow. Because no amount of money could rewrite one fact. He had sent an innocent woman to prison. And then came the funeral. The one she never got to attend. The one that had haunted her nights. Her mother's service was small, quiet, private. She stood at the front, dressed in black, hands folded, eyes dry. Grief had already passed through her like fire. What remained was ash. She spoke softly, simply, about kindness, about strength, about forgiveness she never owed. Then the doors opened. A murmur rippled through the room. He stood there, Her husband. Former. He looked smaller than she remembered. Thinner. Older. Stripped of certainty. He walked forward slowly, like someone approaching an altar they no longer believed in. She felt him before she saw him fully. The weight of unfinished words. He stopped a few feet away. "I didn't know if you'd let me come," he said quietly. She turned, looked at him, really looked, and felt nothing. No anger, no longing, no ache, just clarity. He opened his mouth again. "I lost you," he said. That was when she spoke. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't shake. It landed. "You didn't lose me," she said. The room held its breath. "You erased me." The words cut deeper than shouting ever could. Because they were true. Because they were final. He flinched. She turned away. And that was it. No argument. No apology accepted. No reconciliation scene. Some endings don't need drama. They need boundaries. In the months that followed, she disappeared from headlines. By choice. She moved quietly, deliberately. She found women like herself, wrongfully accused, silenced, forgotten. She listened. She advocated. She built something meaningful from what had almost destroyed her. Not an empire, a lifeline. The billionaire husband continued his life. Luxury, privilege, freedom. But everywhere he went, the truth followed. And truth is louder than money. She kept her peace. That was her victory. He walked away free, but empty. And she walked away scarred, but whole. If you believe power should never be used to destroy the innocent, like this video, and share this story, because silence protects villains. Thank you for watching this story to the end. Please click subscribe, like, and share this video. Click on the screen to watch the next one. And if this story made you feel something, anger, justice, hope, stay here. Because the next story proves this wasn't the only time the truth fought back and won.